So this is me reading, let's see, um, Game of Thrones by George R. Martin, lent to me by Miller. I was planning on doing this chapter by chapter, but the chapters seem pretty short, so I'm gonna probably do like 2 or 3 per reading. Okay, so prologue. We should start back, Garrett urged as the woods began to grow dark around them. The wildlings are dead. Do the dead frighten you? Sir Waymar Royce asked with just a hint of a smile. Garrett did not rise to the bait. He was an old man past 50, and he had seen the lordlings come and go. Dead is dead, he said. We have no business with the dead. Fair. Are they dead? Royce asked softly. What proof we have? Will saw them, Garrett said. If he says they are dead, that's proof enough for me. Will had known they would drag him into the quarrel sooner or later. He wished it had been later rather than sooner. My mother told me that dead men sing no songs, he put in. Okay then. My wet nurse said the same thing, Will, Royce replied. Never believe anything you hear at a woman's tit. There are things to be learned even from the dead. His voice echoed too loudly in the Twilit forest. Twilit forest. I don't know. So far I'm just getting normal words with L-I-N-G at the end. Wildlings, deadlings, lordlings, I don't know. We have a long ride before us, Garrett pointed out. 8 days, maybe 9, and the night is falling. What is going on? Where are they? What's... Okay. Sir Waymar Royce glanced at the sky with disinterest. It does that every day about this time. Are you unmanned by the dark, Garrett? Will could see the tightness around Garrett's mouth, the barely suppressed anger in his eyes, and the black thick hood of his cloak. Garrett, is it Garrett or Jared? I'm gonna get Garrett because it's not a J, but maybe it's like Game of Thrones spelling for Jared. I'll go Garrett. Garrett had spent 40 years in the Night's Watch, man and boy, and he was not accustomed to being made light of. Yet it was more than that. Under the wounded pride, Will could sense something else in the old man. He could taste it, a nervous tension that came perilous close to fear. Will shared his unease. He had been 4 years on the wall. Wall? The first time he had been sent beyond, all the old stories had come rushing back, and his bowels had turned to water. Okay, he had laughed about it afterward. He was a veteran of 100 rangings by now, and the endless dark wilderness that the southern called the haunted forest had no more terrors from him. I'm so confused. I have no idea what any of this actually means. Until tonight. Something was different tonight. There was an edge to this darkness that made his hackles rise. 9 days they had been riding north and northwest, and then north again, farther and farther from the wall, hard on the track of a band of wildling raiders. I don't know what... Okay. Each day had been worse than the day that had come before it. Today was worst of all. A cold wind was blowing out of the north, and it made the trees rustle like living things. All day, Will had felt as though something were watching him, something cold and implacable that loved him not. Well, that's a sign and, foreshadowing, if I ever read one. Garrett had felt it too. Will wanted nothing so much as to ride hellbent for the safety of the war, but that was not a feeling to share with your commander. Especially not a commander like this one. So Waymar Royce was the younger son of an ancient house with too many heirs. Ooh, house! I've heard about houses. Like family houses or something. He was a handsome youth of 18, grey-eyed and graceful, and slender as a knife. What says slender as a knife? Okay. I don't know how slender a knife, like how a person can be slender as a knife. Mounted on his black destrier. I don't know what that is. I'm guessing that's a horse. The knight towered above Will and Garrett. That's bugging me. I'm gonna ask for some confirmation by Miller on how to pronounce his name. On their smaller garrons. He wore black leather boots, black woolen pants, and black moleskin gloves, and a fine supple coat of gleaming black ring mail over layers of black wool and boiled leather. Jeez, this guy is just black and leather. He's sounding a bit like I don't know. I'm not gonna even go there. So Emma had been a sworn brother of the Night's Watch for less than half a year, but no one could say he had not prepared for his vocation, at least in so far as his wardrobe was concerned. Yeah. His cloak was his crowning glory, sable, thick and black, and soft as sin. What is soft as sin? Bet he killed them all himself, he did, Garrett told the barracks over wine. Twisted the little heads off our mighty warrior. They all shared the laugh. It is hard to take orders from a man you laughed at in your cups, Will reflected as he sat shivering atop his garron. Garrett must have felt the same. Moment, I don't know, said as we should track them, and we did, Garrett said. They're dead. They shan't trouble us no more. There's hard riding before us. I don't like this weather. If it snows, we could be a fortnight getting back, and snow's the best we can hope for. Ever seen an ice storm, my lord? The lordling seemed... Oh, right. Because LNIG added to the end would be like... I'm guessing like a duckling. It's like a baby version or a small version or something. I don't know. He studied the deepening twilight in the half-bored, half-distracted way he had. Will had ridden with the night long enough to understand that it was best not to interrupt him when he looked like that. Tell me again what you saw, Will. All the details. Leave nothing out. Segway. No. Will had been a hunter before he joined the Night's Watch. Well, a poacher in truth. Mallister free riders had caught him red-handed in the Mallister's own woods, skinning one of the Mallister's own bucks, and it had been a choice of putting on the black or losing hand. No one could move through the woods as silent as Will, and it had not taken the Black Brothers long enough to discover his talent. The camp is 2 miles farther on, over that ridge, hard beside a stream, Will said. I got close as I dared. There's 8 of them, men and women both. No children I could see. They put up a lean-to against rock. The snow's pretty well covered it now, but I could still make it out. No fire burning, but the fire pit was still plain as day. No one moving. I watched a long time. No living man ever lay so still. Did you see any blood? Well, no, Will admitted. Did you see any weapons? Some swords, a few bows, one man with an axe. Heavy-looking, double-bladed, a cruel piece of iron. It was on the ground beside him, right by his hand. Did you make note of the position of the bodies? Will shrugged. A couple are sitting upright against the rock, most of them on the ground, fallen-like. Or sleeping, Roy suggested. Fallen, Will insisted. There's one woman up in ironwood, half hid in the branches, a far eye. He smiled thinly. I took care she never saw me. When I got closer, I saw that she wasn't moving either. Despite him, he shivered. You have a chill, Royce asked. Some.
Do you have the 2 empty hard drive? What are you reading? Oh.
That's my sister. Okay, where was I? Damn. You have a chill, Royce said. Some, Will muttered. The wind, my lord. The young knight turned to his grizzled man-at-arms. Frostfallen leaves whispered past them, and Roy's destrua moved restlessly. What do you think might have killed these men, Garrett? Sir Waymar asked casually. He adjusted the drape of his long sable coat. It was a cold, Garrett said with iron certainty. I saw men freeze last winter and the one before when I was half a boy. Everyone talks about snows 40 foot deep and how ice winds come howling out of the north. But the real enemy is a cold. It steals up on you quieter than will, and at first you shiver, and your teeth chatter, and you stamp your feet, and dream of mulled wine, and nice hot fires. It burns, it does. Nothing burns like the cold, but only for a while. Then it gets inside you and starts to fill you up, and after a while you don't have the strength to fight it. It's easier to just sit down or go to sleep. They say you don't feel any pain towards the end. First you get weak and drowsy, and everything starts to fade, and it's like sinking into a sea of warm milk, peaceful-like. Such eloquence, Garrett, Sir Waymar observed. I've never suspected you had it in you. So wait. Is he just talking about, like, really cold temperatures or, like, environment or winter? I don't know. I had the cold in me too, lordling. Garrett pulled back his hood, giving Sir Waymer a good long look at the stumps where his ears had been. 2 ears, 3 toes, and the little finger of my left hand. I got off light. We found my brother frozen at his watch with a smile on his face. Ugh. So Emma shrugged. You ought to dress more warmly, Garrett. Garrett glared at the lordling. The scars around his ears flushed red with anger, where Master Aemon had cut his ears away. We'll see how warm you can dress when winter comes. When winter comes. He pulled up his hood and hunched over his Garen, silent and sullen. If Garrett said it was the cold, Will began. Have you drawn any watches this past week, Will? Yes, my lord. There never was a week when he did not draw a dozen bloody watches. What was the man driving at? And how did you find the wall? Weeping, Will said, frowning. He saw it clear enough now the Lord had pointed it out. They couldn't have froze, not if the wall was weeping. It wasn't cold enough. Royce nodded. Bright lad, we have a few light frosts this past week and a quick flurry of snow now and then, but surely no cold fierce enough to kill 8 grown men. Men clad in fur and leather, let me remind you, with shelter near at hand and the means of making fire. The knight's smile was kosher. Will, lead us there. I would see these dead men for myself. So wait, has winter actually come yet? Or winter passed? Winter's happening? Winter is about to come? Or is this just normal cold weather and the normal cold weather sucks? I don't know. And then there was nothing to be done for it. The order had been given, the honor bound to them to obey. Will went in front, his shaggy little Garen picking the way carefully through the undergrowth. A light snow had fallen the night before, and there were stones and roots and hidden sinks lying just under its crust, waiting for the careless and the unwary. So Waymar Royce came next, his great black destrier snorting impatiently. The warhorse was the wrong mount for ranging, but try and tell that to the lordling. Garrett brought up the rear. The old man-at-arms muttered to himself as he rode. Twilight deepened. Every time I just see or hear the word twilight, it's just frigging franchise. Stephanie Meyer, damn you. The cloudless sky turned a deep purple, the color of an old bruise, then faded to black. The stars began to come out. A half-moon rose. Will was grateful for the light. We can make a better pace than this, surely, Royce said when the moon was fully risen. Not with this horse, Will said. Fear had made him insolent. Perhaps my lord would care to take the lead? Sir Waymar Royce did not deign suck at words, to reply. Somewhere off in the wood a wolf howled. Say that quick. Would a wolf howled. Yeah. Will put his Garen over beneath an ancient gnarled ironwood and dismounted. Why are you stopping? Sir Waymar asked. Best go the rest of the way on foot, my lord. It's just over that ridge. Royce paused a moment, staring off into the distance, his face reflective. A cold wind whispered through the trees. There are too many cold winds lately. Not like they can control it. His great sable cloak stirred behind like something half alive. That's dramatic. There's something wrong here, Garrett muttered. The young knight gave him a disdainful smile. Is there? Can't you feel it? Garrett asked. Listen to the darkness. Will could feel it. 4 years in the Night's Watch, and he's never been so afraid. What was it? Wind, trees rustling, a wolf. Which sound is it that unmans you so, Garrett? When Garrett did not answer, Royce slid gracefully from his saddle. He tied the destrier securely from the low-hanging limb, well away from the other horses, and drew his longsword from its sheath. Jewels glittered at its hilt, and the moonlight ran down from the shining steel. It was a splendid weapon, castle-forged and new-made for the look of it. Will doubted it had been ever swung in anger. The trees press close here, Will warned. The sword will tangle you up, my lord. Better a knife. If I need instruction, I'll ask you for it, the young lord said. Garrett, stay here, guard the horses. Okay, the lord sounds a little like... Listen to the people, men. Listen to your people. This is gonna end, like, horribly, and it's just a prologue. I can feel it. Am I wrong? I don't know. Garrett dismounted. We need a fire. I'll see to it. How big a fool are you, old man? If there are enemies in this wood, a fire is the last thing we want. Even I know that. Like a wood. It's like, hey, I'm here. Come rob and kill me. There's some enemies a fire will keep away, Garrett said. Bears and direwolves and other things. Like what? So Waymar's mouth became a hard line. No fire. Garrett's hood shadowed his face, but Wood could see the hard glitter in his eyes as he stared at the night. For a moment he was afraid the older man would go for his sword. It was a short, ugly thing, its grip discolored by sweat, its edge nicknamed for hard use. But Will would not have given an iron bob for the lordling's life if Garrett pulled it from his scabbard. Finally Garrett looked down. No fire, he muttered low under his breath. Royce took it for I don't know what that word is, and turned away. Lead on, he said to Will. Will threaded his way through a thicket and then started up the slope to the low ridge where he found his vantage point under a sentinel tree. On a thin crust of snow, the ground was damp and muddy, slick footing with rocks and hidden roots to trip you up. Will made no sound as he climbed. Behind him he heard a soft metallic slither of the Lord's ringmail, the rustle of leaves, and muttered curses as reaching branches grabbed at his longsword and tugged on his splendid sable coat. See, if you're gonna go through, like, a really crowded Sleeping Beauties type of forest kind of thing, with massive branches, don't wear a massive dramatic coat and, like, that sword. You're just gonna get tangled. It's common sense. I don't even wear chainmail or wear a frigging cloak, and I know this. But the great sentinel was right there at the top of the ridge, where Will had known it would be, its lowest branches a bare foot off the ground. Will slid underneath it, flat on his belly in the snow and the mud, and looked down on the empty clearing below. His heart stopped in his chest. For a moment he dared not breathe. Moonlight shone down on the clearing, the ashes of the fire pit, the snow-covered lean-to, the great rock, the half-frozen stream. Everything was just as it had been a few hours ago. They were gone. All the bodies were gone. Dun dun dun. Gods, he heard behind him. A sword slashed at a branch as Sir Waymar Royce gained the ridge. He stood there beside the sentinel, longsword in hand, his cloak billowing behind him as the wind came up, outlining nobly against the stars for all to see. Yeah, that's smart. Get down, Will whispered urgently. Something's wrong. Royce did not move. He looked down at the empty clearing and laughed. Your dead men seem to have moved company, Will. Will's voice abandoned him. He groped for words that did not come. It was not possible. His eyes swept back and forth over the abandoned campsite and stopped on the axe. A huge double-bladed battle axe, still lying where he had last seen it, untouched. A valuable weapon. That's never a good sign. On your feet, Will, Sir Waymar commanded. There's no one here. I won't have you hiding under a bush. Reluctantly, Will obeyed. Sir Waymar looked him over with opening disapproval. I'm not going back to the Castle Black a failure on my first ranging. We will find these men. He glanced around. Up the tree. Be quick about it. Look for a fire. Will turned away, wordless. There was no use to argue. The wind was moving, and it cut right through him. He went to the tree, a vaulting green-grey sentinel, and began to climb. Soon his hands were sticky with sap, and he was lost among the needles. Fear filled his gut like a meal he could not digest. He whispered a prayer to the nameless gods of the wood, and slipped his dirk free of his sheath. What's a dirk? I don't know. I'll look that up later. He put it between his teeth. Oh wait, it's a dagger or something, I'm guessing? I sound like such an idiot. He put it in between his teeth to keep both hands free for climbing. The taste of cold iron in his mouth gave him comfort. Yeah, it's a weapon. It's a weapon. Down below, the lordling called out suddenly. Who goes there? Will heard uncertainty in the challenge. He stopped climbing. He listened. He watched. The woods gave no answer. The rustle of leaves, icy rush of the stream, and a distant hoot of a snow owl. The others made no sound. Others with a capital letter, so... Is that like an official name, or just like... I don't know. The others made no sound. Will saw movement from the corner of his eye. Pale shapes gliding through the wood. He turned his head, glimpsed a white shadow in the dark. A white shadow? That's the oxymoron if I heard one. In the darkness, and then it was gone. Branches stirred quite gently in the wind. scratching at one another with wooden fingers. Will opened his mouth to call down a warning, and the words seemed to freeze in his throat. Perhaps it was wrong. Perhaps it was only a bird, a reflection on the snow, some trick of the moonlight. What had he seen, after all? Will, where are you? Sir Waymar called up. Can you see anything? He was turning in a slow circle, suddenly wary, his sword in his hand. He must have felt them as Will felt them. There was nothing to see. Answer me, why is it so cold? It was cold, shivering. Will clung more tightly to his perch, his face pressed hard up against the trunk of the sentinel. He could feel the sweet, sticky sap on his cheek. A shadow emerged from the dark of the wood. It stood in front of Royce, tall as it was and gaunt as hard as old bones, with flesh pale as milk. Its armor seemed to change color as it moved. Here it was white as new-fallen snow. There were black as shadow everywhere, dappling with the green-gray of the trees. The patterns ran like moonlight on the water with every step it took. What is going on? Will heard the breath go out of Sir Waymar Royce in a long hiss. Come no farther, the long lordling warned. His voice cracked like a boy's. He threw the long sable cloak back over his shoulders to free his arms for battle, and took his sword in both hands. The wind had stopped, and it was still very cold. The other slid forward on silent feet. In its hand was a long sword, like none that Will had ever seen. No human metal had gone into the forging of that blade. It was alive with moonlight, translucent, a shard of crystal so thin that it seemed to almost vanish when seen edge on. There was a faint blue shimmer to the thing, a ghost light that played around its edges, and somehow Will knew it was sharper than any razor. So Waymar met him bravely. Dance with me then. Dance with me then. Sorry. He lifted his sword high above his head, defiant. His hands trembled from the weight of it, or perhaps from the cold. Yet in that moment, Will thought, he was a boy no longer, but a man of the night's watch. The other halted. Will saw his eyes. Blue, deeper and bluer than any human eyes, a blue that burned like ice. They fixed on the longsword, trembling on high, watched the moonlight running cold along the metal. For a heartbeat he dared to hope. That's the mistake, don't hope. They emerged silently from the shadows, twins to the first. 3 of them, 4, 5. So Waymar may have felt the cold that came with them, but he never saw them and never heard them. Will had to call out. It was his duty, and his death if he did. He shivered and hugged the tree and kept the silence. Oh, Will had to call out. The pale sword came shivering through the air. So Waymar met it with steel. When the blades met, there was no ring of metal on metal, only a high, thin sound at the edge of hearing, like an animal screaming in pain. Ugh, that's a weird simile. Royce had checked a second blow, and a third, and then fell back a step. Another flurry of blows, and he fell back again. Behind him, to right, to left, all around him, the watchers stood patient, faceless, silent, the shifting patterns on their delicate armor making them all but invisible in the wood. Yet they made no move to intervene. Again and again the swords met until Will wanted to cover his ears against the strange, anguished keening of the clash. Sir Waymar was panting for the effort now, his breath steaming in the moonlight. His blade was white with frost, the others danced with pale blue light. Well, isn't Will, like, under Royce's command? Why is he just watching? Like, I would just watch too, because I'd be scared of it out of my mind, but isn't this during, like a loyal, honorable knighthood kind of era, where they just die for whoever they're serving? I don't know. But, damn it, Will, what are you doing? Then Royce's parry came a beat too late. The pale sword bit through the ringmail beneath his arm. The young lord cried out in pain. Blood welled between the rings. It steamed in the cold, and the droplets seemed red as fire when they touched the snow. So Waymar's fingers brushed his side. His moleskin glove came away, soaked with red. Jeez, wait. Where did it hit? The ringmail. Oh, so like armpit area kind of thing? Yeah. The other said something in a language that Will did not know. His voice was like the cracking of ice on a winter lake, and the words were mocking. So Waymar Royce found his fury. For Robert! He shouted, and he came up snarling, lifting the frost-covered longsword with both hands and swinging it around in a flat sidearm slash with all his weight behind it. The other's parry was almost lazy. When the blades touched, the steel shattered. A scream echoed through the forest night, and the longsword shivered into 100 brittle pieces, the shards scattering like a rain of needles. Royce went onto his knees, shrieking and covering his eyes. Blood welled between his fingers. Ugh. The watchers moved forward together, as if some signal had been given. Swords rose and fell, all in deathly silence. It was cold butchery. The pale blades sliced through ringmail as if it was silk. Will closed his eyes. Far beneath him, he heard the voices and laughter sharp as icicles. When he found the courage to look again, and long time has passed, the ridge below was empty. He stayed in the trees, scarce daring to breathe, while the moon crept slowly across the black sky. Finally, his muscles cramping and his fingers numb with cold, he climbed down. Royce's body laid face down in the snow, one arm outflung. The thick sable cloak had been slashed in a dozen pieces. Lying dead like that, you saw how young he was. A boy. He found that what was left of the sword was a few feet away, the end splintered and twisted like a tree struck by lightning. Will knelt, looking around warily, and snatched it up. The broken sword would be his proof. Garrod would know what to make of it, and if not him, then surely the old bear Mormont or Master Aemon. Would Garrod still be waiting with his horses? He had to hurry. Will rose. Sir Waymar Royce stood over him. His fine clothes were a tatter, his face a ruin. A shard from his sword transfixed the blind white pupil of his left eye. The right eye was open. The pupil turned blue. It saw. The broken sword fell from nerveless fingers. Will closed his eyes to pray. Long, elegant hands brushed his cheeks, then tightened around his throat. They were gloved in the finest moleskin, sticky with blood, yet the touch was icy cold. And that's the end of the prologue. I have no idea, I know what happened, but I have no idea why or what is actually going on. Some guy just died and then became one of the things that killed him and then started killing the... I don't know. But I guess I'm doing chapter by chapter because that was longer than I thought it would be. Or should I do another? I don't know. I'll just do one for now. And I'll see you on the flip side. I just said I'll see you on the flip side, I don't know why.